ability of an airship to come to the aid of stranded survivors had been demonstrated back in 1918. However, the Navy's pressure airship inventory in the early 1920s had been drastically cut to save precious helium for the insatiable demands of the large rigid airships. Upgrading from the Great War veterans, when the modern K-type airship was called for in 1935, the design did not include provisions for rescue equipment. With America's entry into World War II, it was immediately obvious this oversight would have to be corrected.
In times of war or peace, routine patrol flights along the coast of South America sometimes take the blimps over great areas where travel by air is the only practical means. But jungles and swamps are no obstacles to these ships of the sky. Equipped with the most adequate and modern means of communication, the blimps can keep in constant touch with their home base and other distant contacts. Sometimes they receive orders which send them on search and rescue missions far beyond the frontier and deep into jungle areas where other means of rescue are exceedingly difficult or even impossible. The blimp is so easily maneuvered that in many instances it can be put right down on the ground for the survivors to climb aboard.
Early in 1943, Lieutenant Commander Lou Ayres earned a Distinguished Flying Cross by landing his K-ship on a beach to allow a marooned Army flyer to scramble aboard. The technique was adopted by the airship fleet for several more rescues in the Americas.
Jungle rescues are not always accomplished with such ease. The character of the country in which airplanes are forced down generally does not permit bringing the blimp down to the ground. But such difficulties have been overcome by special rescue equipment designed for the purpose by the United States Naval Airship Training Experimental Command, with headquarters at Lakehurst, New Jersey, USA.
Finding no suitable landing area near Army flyers stranded in the desert, Lieutenant Ace Culbertson crash-landed his K-ship and effected the pickup. Dropping off the men and making temporary repairs, the K-ship crew successfully returned to base. Ace was also awarded the DFC.
Wild, undeveloped, and jungle areas cover large sections of many districts in South America. Air transportation has tremendously aided development of these regions, and many planes fly over them with equipment and supplies for remote mines and other developments. Occasionally, these planes are, for various reasons, forced down in these vast and impenetrable jungle areas. The pilots and passengers are almost certain to perish unless rescued by outside assistance, and the blimp has already proven itself by far the most practicable and efficient means of search and rescue of these unfortunate victims. 3 different groups of airplane pilots and passengers who had been forced down in vast jungle areas of Brazil were found and rescued within 1 month during 1944 by a single United States Navy blimp. Every one of these men might have perished if it had not been for the blimp. The ring can be dropped literally into the survivor's hands for him to climb aboard and be hoisted up to the blimp with the assistance of a counterweight at the other end of the rope. If, however, the survivors are badly injured or otherwise not in condition to get into the ring without aid, a medical officer is let down to the ground to help them.
By 1944, German and Japanese submarine sightings off the coastal Americas had dropped substantially, so missions were just as likely to locate and rescue survivors. Innovative airshipmen developed their own equipment for dropping a life ring from a pulley mounted over the aft boarding door. Once secured, the appropriate weight in sandbags was secured to the other end of the life ring line. Thus counterweighted, the crew pulled the victim up to the door hand over hand.
As the survivor comes up, the counterweight goes down. When the survivor reaches the open doorway of the blimp, he is pulled inside, where any medical treatment required is immediately administered. Less than 15 minutes are required for the average rescue, from the time the blimp arrives over the scene to the time when the survivor is safely inside the airship.
A messenger ring was then sent down the line to release the counterweighting sandbags, thus restoring the airship's static condition after picking up the survivors.
As many as 3 men have been rescued from death in the jungle within the brief time of 17 minutes. This same equipment is equally as efficient in rescuing men from the sea who have had to abandon their ships and float on the ocean surface in rubber rafts or merely with the aid of life preservers.
As airship deliveries ramped up in 1942, the instances where blimp crews spotted desperate survivors of plane crashes and U-boat attacks became more and more common. Innovative airshipmen quickly became unsatisfied with simply dropping a raft, then standing aloft over the spot and radioing for ground or sea-based units to follow them in. Spotting a 2-man life raft containing survivors very far out to sea, one K-ship crew trimmed their ship to drag the mooring lines by the raft. The survivors tied the nose lines to their raft. The airship slowly towed them to safety several hours away. Heading out to rescue downed flyers that boats could not reach, Lieutenant Commander Marion Epps had ordered a 10-man raft to be lashed to his K-ship's handrails. Had it been mounted upside down, it could have supported the car for temporary water landing. However, right side up, the raft took on water and had to be discarded. No other lesson was thereby learned. An empty container resembling a sea bag was lowered into the water, and its open top allowed quick filling. Acting as an altitude stabilizer, as the airship took on superheat and rose, it had to lift an increasingly heavy water weight. Likewise, as the airship lost altitude, the bag re-entering the water gave up its load. Next, a ring line was fed over the aft door pulley, and the rescue ring was lowered to the victim. Once secure, the crew performed hand-over-hand hauling up into the airship car. The War Department allowed the K-ship assembly line to starve out for critical materials. In the spring of 1944, the line had to be shut down before there was interest in adding a standard rescue provision. Meanwhile, the most effective anti-submarine tools, sonobuoys, contact depth charges, and the homing torpedo, were withheld from the existent airship fleet until the final weeks of the war. The self-taught airship crews perfected techniques for overwater rescue with additional equipment added to the remaining K-ships. As shown, the procedure involved carrying a number of sandbags aloft on any mission expected to perform a rescue. Upon arrival at the scene, the airship's nose was brought into the wind, while throttles and elevators were adjusted to maintain station.
When all the survivors are aboard the blimp, a special device releases the counterweight, and the airship proceeds back to civilization. With the supplies and information procured, the blimp quickly takes off to continue on its mission of search and rescue. Man's successful conquest of the air has served mankind, and the blimp, like many other of man's marvelous inventions, has earned its place in history's Hall of Fame and renown.
As this film ends, the closing credits promise that a number of anti-submarine airships were being refitted for rescue. The .50 caliber machine gun was to be replaced in its turret by a powerful searchlight. 3 additional bunks were restored to the K-ships. Eventually, a powerful winch was added to the stern, eliminating the need for crewmen to haul in the victim by hand. However, in the post-war drawdown, Congress, in its wisdom, cut funding down to 16 operational airships. Less than a dozen rescue airships had been fitted. The Coast Guard again failed to receive authorization for those or any other rescue airships. Some of the K-ships that had been converted for rescue were switched back to anti-submarine warfare, while others were simply scrapped. It was to be another missed opportunity awaiting discovery by a new generation.